22nd, special study meeting of the Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Additionally, the agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city's website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission. The roles and responsibilities of the Planning Commission are outlined on the reverse side of tonight's agenda. State law establishes planning commissions. The commission is comprised of 9 members, all of whom have volunteered to serve. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. The other individuals seated at the table this evening are representatives of the city's planning department, the city's attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Workman Associates. And our student is not, is he here? Yeah. Oh, there he is. Hey, Frank. And a student representative from the Troy Schools. If you wish to address the Planning Commission, please come forward when recognized and provide your name and address on the sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission, not to anyone else in the room. At this time, I ask that all cell phones, BlackBerries, PDAs, or any other devices that might disrupt this meeting please be either silenced or turned off. Now, for items that are not public hearings, I will provide an opportunity for the public to comment. Kathy, you're doing it.
Mr. Edmonds?
Here.
Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Kempen?
Here.
Mr. Krent?
Here.
Mr. Zanzika? Mr. Shepke?
Here.
Mr. Schultz?
Here.
Mr. Stratt? Mr. Tagle?
Here. All right, item number 2, approval of the agenda.
Move it as prepared, Mr. Chairman. Support.
Mr. Hudson, thank you.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Kempen?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Shepke?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Stratt?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Item number 3, you've received the minutes of our October 8, 2013 regular meeting. Any discussion or comments or changes or motion?
Move to approve as published.
Mr. Edmonds, Mr. Stratt seconds.
Mr. Kempen?
Yes.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Shepke?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Stratt?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Item number 4, for public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone here tonight who would like to speak on something that's not on the agenda? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Terry Adams, 5970 Sussex. I know you haven't had a chance to look at the site plan for the pipeline, but I would just like to put one idea in your minds when you do is, what is the safety factor for the residents who possibly could have a house within 200 feet of this totally above-ground pipeline? Is there a safety factor for us residents we should know about? And who should basically instruct that to us? Sunoco, Troy, or whoever?
Thank you. Anyone else? Items not on the agenda. All right, item number 5. Do we have a zoning board of appeals report?
We had no meeting.
No meeting? Okay. Item number 6, Downtown Development Authority report.
The meeting for the 16th, on the 16th, was canceled, and there is a meeting scheduled for October 30th.
Thank you. And the planning and zoning report.
Planning and zoning report, there are 2 items scheduled for public hearing that the Planning Commission reviewed. One is the conditional rezoning on Stevenson, just north of 14 Mile, and the other one is the proposed revisions to the Kilmer PUD on just north side of Big Beaver. Again, they're both scheduled for November 11th, the City Council meeting.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments on the report? All right, moving on to item number 8, the first postponed item. It's a preliminary site plan review, file number SP 985. The proposed Oakland Troy Senior Project, southeast corner of Square Lake and Adams, section 20, currently zoned R1A, one family residential district. Mr. Savana?
No, Mr. Carlisle is going to make the presentation. I just want to point out one thing. Mr. Adams mentioned the pipeline project. I just want to give everyone in the room here an idea of what we're talking about. If you drive by the site, it's located right in here. And basically, here's what happened. Sunoco's doing a massive pipeline project that goes, it's Ohio and Michigan, it's pretty lengthy. They contacted our engineering department, said they were gonna do some ongoing maintenance to the pipeline. Do we have a problem with it? We said no. Ongoing maintenance is common. And they constructed what, if anyone's been out there, they've constructed a couple of pretty large, I would call kind of obnoxious looking structures. Understandably so, the neighbors are upset. I'm upset because, quite frankly, there should have been a site plan that was submitted prior to making the improvements. So it's put us in a situation where, quite frankly, we look like idiots. I don't appreciate it. So we've asked Sunoco to give us a site plan. I received the site plan today. It is not in the Planning Commission's purview to review. It's an interesting situation because there's an easement here, partly in our right-of-way, partly on the subject parcel that we're talking about. My understanding is Sunoco has leased or purchased an easement for this pipeline. Again, I received the site plan today. What we asked them to do was to build on the landscape plan that was provided to us for the senior project, so it's going to be seamless. It's going to transition seamlessly. The intent is to screen it, buffer it, make it so that when you're driving by, you see shrubs and trees, and it's not an eyesore like it is today. So that's where we're at. Again, not in the Planning Commission's purview, although it's kind of unique because it's on this property, and so I want to. I've shared the site plan with Mr. Adams. If anyone would like a copy of it, I can email it to you. I can print it off, give you a hard copy. If you have questions, you can email or call me. I want to be transparent and keep everyone in the loop. That's where we're at. Apologies, for the confusion and for neighbors being upset. That's kind of the hand we were dealt, and it is what it is. Thank you.
Carlo.
Yes, thank you. My report focuses only on the proposed senior living facility development and does not get into the issues in regards to the pipeline. The applicant is proposing a 92-bed senior assisted living facility located at the southeast corner of Square Lake and Adams Road. If the Planning Commission remembers, this is the second time that the Planning Commission has reviewed the matter. It was first reviewed by the Planning Commission at the September 24th meeting, and at that time, the issues raised by the Planning Commission include site arrangements, parking adequacy, landscaping requirements, building access in relation to the parking lot, as well as access and circulation to the site. The applicant has made some slight changes to their proposed site plan and landscape plan. I'm going to quickly highlight the changes to the plan and then be open for any questions from the Planning Commission. Senior living facilities, in regards to setback, height, bulk, and area and lot coverage, are required to meet the multifamily district zoning requirements. And based on these requirements, the site, as shown, the building placement does meet all the requirements of that of the multifamily district. In regards to parking adequacy, based on 92 beds, 58 parking spaces are required for those 92 beds. In addition, there are 30 parking spaces for employees, so the 88 parking spaces provided are required by ordinance. I do note that there was an error in my report. I did say that they're not compliant to parking. However, they are compliant to parking with the 88 spaces in addition to the bicycle parking spaces that they have provided. In addition, the applicant is not providing any ancillary services such as rehabilitation or any of those types of uses, so they do not require additional parking other than what's required for employee parking and bed parking. So again, the 88 parking spaces as shown by the applicant is sufficient. In regards to building access, one of the questions the Planning Commission had was the relationship of the parking to the access of the building. Most of the primary residential access for guests is located in the front of the building. However, most of the parking spaces are located at the side and the rear. The applicant has not addressed the concerns raised by the Planning Commission, so we do note that either the applicant should provide better circulation around the building, specifically the side and the rear, or make the rear access point more accessible to visitors and guests. In regards to landscaping, the applicant has submitted a landscape plan. They do comply with all site landscaping, including parking lot, green belt, and screening for the southern parking lot. The only issue that we raise is the deficiency in landscaping and screening for the 21 spaces that are along Sussex Road. The applicant should either provide a 3-foot high berm or consider a 3-foot knee wall and or a 3-foot tall decorative fence. We encourage either the fence or the knee wall rather than the berm. In regards to access and circulation, the plans have been reviewed by the engineering consultant as well as the city's traffic engineer. There are a number of recommendations. However, the most significant one is that the applicant is required to extend the center turn lane on Square Lake Road past the existing site driveway. The applicant has agreed to do that change based on the recommendation of the traffic engineer. So overall, we recommend preliminary approval of the site plan based on the aforementioned conditions I just noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Carlisle?
Question for our attorney, but that's,
Oh, there she is.
we received a letter this evening from a, let me bring it out here, from Mr. John Mills, and he's questioning how this piece of property is to be described. He said there's no, the project is described as a senior assisted living, which arguably brings it under the list of permitted uses in the R1A zoning district. However, assisted living is not defined under section 2.02 of the Troy zoning ordinance, and terms are not defined under the ordinance shall have the meaning of customary assigned to them. Could you just shed a little light on this? To me, it's a little confusing as far
Mr.
as.
Carlin said he would be able to answer that.
Um,
If that's okay with you, and if
I
that's
think
okay with you.
Absolutely, I would refer you to Mr. Carlisle because
Okay.
he's had more discussion with
Okay.
the applicant, so he
Um,
can explain what's going on.
Thank you.
I think the confusion is assisted senior living is listed under senior housing. It's not listed under senior assisted under the A's, and so the definition cannot be found under the A's. Assisted senior living is a defined use under senior housing, and this application does meet the assisted senior living definition.
Very good. Thank you for clearing that up.
Yep.
Yes, Mr. Shepherd.
Yes, and going over the prints and going out to the job site and looking it over, there's this 3-foot tall masonry knee wall or berm with shrubs on it. I think it's really very inadequate to block any lighting, and that when cars are driving around that parking lot, if you're pulled right up in a parking space facing Sussex, that might shut the light off, but as you're coming down the lot, there's going to be a lot of light that's going to be cast over on at least the first 3 homes on Sussex, and I think that that's woefully inadequate. Over on Stevenson Highway, the applicant said they'd put an 8-foot wall up to block the lighting, and I think that 3 foot is just, this is a beautiful neighborhood, and I hate to see it ruined by the intrusion of unwanted and unneeded lighting into their residential area.
Yes.
I tend to agree with you. Unfortunately, this is considered a front yard, and so the maximum height allowed in the front yard is 3 feet. So unfortunately, they cannot go above the 3 feet. They can do more increased landscaping, which obviously is above 3 feet. But if you want a structure such as a fence or wall, they have to be no higher than 3 feet along that location.
Mr. Carlisle, could it be 3 feet on a berm?
Let me get back to you on that.
The applicant could agree to seek a variance in the Building Code Board of Appeals for the sign height to go higher. I'm not saying he's gonna get the variance, but he can seek the variance.
Another thing is you have the dumpster over on that side too, and any smells or any, it's all gonna be affecting those residents on Sussex, and I don't like that. That's another thing, I don't like that dumpster backed up to there.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? All right, is the petitioner here tonight? Like to step up to the microphone, sir, and state your name. If you haven't signed in, please do so.
Renzo Cavalier, 30078 Shaner, Warren, Michigan. I represent the property owner in the development, and I'm here to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Well, you've heard couple of the concerns. Could you speak to those, please?
The first item that was raised that I'd like to address is the having access in the rear of the building. Actually, for a building like this that has an operation like this, you try to control your points of ingress and egress from visitors or anyone who's coming in. It's very similar to a school in the sense when you get there, you want everybody to come in through one door that has security there, that has someone sitting at a desk. The north entrance, which served as that entrance, having visitors coming in and out of an area where your deliveries are coming in or staff is coming in and out, generally is not a good idea, but it's mostly a safety issue. And we do have access on the east and west side, which that would only be through access by a code or a fob that could get you into those ends of the building. But the main entrance is the north entrance, and we strive to have any visitors always come into one entrance as opposed to multiple entrances. It's totally a security issue. As far as the east fronting Sussex, along that eastern property line, we do have 3-foot berms. It's called out in the plan, as well as shrubs and trees. So it's heavily vegetated per the plan that we submitted, and we also have the 3-foot berm, and I believe that meets the ordinance.
Did you say 3-foot
Ma'am,
berms?
ma'am. Yes, Mr. Edmondson.
Well, the operative question then is, why did you submit a site plan where the visitors have to park in the rear of the building or on the end and walk all the way around? This is a senior center. You know, some of these people are going to be old, like me, so I think it's a poor site plan. Why did you not shove the building back and put all the parking in front?
Actually, it was recommended to move the building to the northwest, which we have done. We're in this business right now as operators, and when we look at the traffic patterns, the visitor patterns, we don't believe that those spaces that are immediately to the north of the eastern side of the building, it would be very uncommon for all of those spaces there to be full. The visiting patterns are on the way to work, on the way home from work, throughout the day. There is a peak, obviously, there's a peak in anything. But the peak never reaches the point where we believe that the visitor parking to the north of the building and going around to the northeast of the building would be totally occupied. We're required to have 88 spaces. We have provided 88 spaces. We believe that is probably more than what we need. However, the plan that we've submitted does show 88 spaces.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Prince.
Again, following up on the entrance areas, the eastern half of that building, if you made it jog, basically over a little and down, and then that whole row of parking that is directly south of the building could be put onto the north side. I'm just thinking I totally agree that there's going to be a situation, especially on weekends, where you're going to get a lot of cars in there. A lot of people, old people, visit on weekends. I used to do that with my mom. And to me, I can understand why you need one entrance that's monitored security-wise and people sign in. But I know you're going to need more parking at the main entrance than what I see on the drawing. It just there's got to be a way to reconfigure that so that there's more parking immediately near the front entrance.
Those who visit on a regular basis would have an access code which would get them into the east side of the building. Those who do not would be going through into the north entrance. If you have an access code and have access to the building, you're going to park, most likely, close to that eastern entrance door. So as far as it being spread out, and there are 2 points of ingress and egress. Another point to mention is that the layout of the building, from a practical sense on the inside of the building and internally, what's going on internally has something to do with the design as well, obviously. However, I would be very surprised if those spaces on the north side of the building would be full at any given point in time. We've proven it internally with other facilities, but also through traffic analysis, it points to the same findings that we have practically found through our own experience.
Mr. Chair, just to follow up on that.
Sure, absolutely.
People generally have a lot of codes in their head. We're onslaughted with passcodes. I don't think a visitor visiting Aunt Mary or whoever's there can remember a passcode from the time they get from the phone to the time they drive there and remember what passcode it was. I think that passcode thing will not work in the majority of cases. I don't think that's a solution. I think you should maybe make the east side the front entrance there or something. There's another way to handle it than asking people to remember a passcode.
The way we've addressed it, speaking specifically to your question here, or concern, I should say, is that in the event that you don't, let's say you go to visit someone and you forget your passcode, you can still buzz in. There will be cameras at every entrance, including the rear, that doesn't have visitors coming in. And at one building, there's a little sign right above the punch-in where it says, to reach someone, press *001. And then that buzzes you into someone. You're standing at the door, there's a camera right on you, and people are not let in unless they're recognized. At that point, they would direct them. But if you're a regular visitor, you do have the passcode. In the event that you forget that, that's how that is addressed. And it is important to note that families who regularly visit, the staff not only knows the residents, but the staff gets to know the residents' families as well. So it has not been an issue in the past for us from a practical standpoint, or for the residents or their families.
Mr. Schultz.
With all due respect, I'm looking at the landscape plan, and I would not call the east area of the parking lot heavily vegetated along Sussex. There are 8 trees and 30 viburnum plants grouped in 3 groups of 10, which leaves easily half of the parking places with no screening between them and the street. So I'm just saying, as a planning commissioner, my vision of highly vegetated is obviously different than yours.
Do you'd indicated, or the report indicates that you have 30 staff parking spaces. What's the number of staff that you have on your maximum shift?
Maximum shift is 24.
And are there going to be signs indicating or direction given to the staff where they can park?
Absolutely, without question. Staff is to enter through the rear entrance. That is where they will punch in and punch out. And we have more than 30 along the rear of the building.
Yes, Mr. Grant.
So you're saying that southern entrance has a passcode camera set up similar to the east entrance? Could visitors come in that southern entrance or not?
We don't want visitors coming in that southern entrance, because that is where where shipping and receiving is, that's where deliveries are made, that's where staff comes in. That entrance, when you walk in, has a time clock there. It's a whole completely different arrangement than the main entrance.
Any other questions for the petitioner? Thank you. Again, this is not a public hearing, but if there's anyone here that would want to speak to this item, I'll allow that. I would ask you to keep your comments as brief as you can. And if someone has gotten up before you and spoke on what you want to talk about, just get up and state your name and say that your points have been taken or made already. So if there's anyone, step to the microphone, and if you haven't signed in, please sign in and state your name.
My name is Kathy Mills, and I'm the wife of the person who was mentioned in this meeting about a correspondence that was received earlier today. First of all, I'd like some clarification. This committee who's sitting here now has already made the decision?
No, there's been no decision made.
Great, good to know. And so my question is, Mr. Savident, I believe you received a copy of through email, a copy of the letter. And I'm wondering if everybody here has a copy of the letter?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. And for the record, I would like to share the information in the letter because I think it's very important that each element be considered. The project has been described as senior assisted living, which arguably brings it under the list of permitted uses in the R1A zoning district. However, assisted living is not defined under section 2.02 of the Troy zoning ordinance. Quote, terms not defined under the ordinance shall have the meaning customarily assigned to them, unquote. Troy zoning ordinance, section 2.01I.
Ma'am, can I interrupt you just for a
Yes.
minute? I don't know if you heard earlier that one of the commissioners asked for clarification on that point. Did you hear?
And I did not understand what the clarification was.
Mr. Carlisle, would you like to maybe try to
Assisted
explain?
living is classified under senior housing, and so that might be the reason why your husband was not able to find the definition. It's actually under senior housing, assisted living.
Who is it classified under senior housing? Who classifies it?
The zoning ordinance classifies it by that.
It's defined in the
Defined in the
ordinance.
zoning ordinance.
Troy zoning ordinance?
Yes.
Troy zoning ordinance?
Ma'am, did you give our address where you live?
Yes, I'm on 5755 Sussex, which is about 4 houses down from where the assisted living facility will be considered. Okay, so what you're saying is this is a moot point, the whole definition of assisted living, because
Assisted living is a permitted use in the zoning district. It meets the definition of assisted living, so we classify it as an assisted living facility.
But if you have, oh, and I wish my husband was here, and I'm sorry he's not. If you have a section 2.02 stating that terms that are not defined under the ordinance of 2.02, you're saying it's in 2.02?
It is defined under 2.0. It's defined under the definition under 2.02.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right, so let me go on to point number 2. The developers will no doubt point to the office buildings located on the northeast corner and the northwest corner of the intersection as precedent for developing the 4 corners of the intersection commercially. This has been an argument in prior attempts to construct an office building on the parcel. The developed parcels are unique in that they are both bounded on the north by I-75. The parcel before the commission is part of a plated subdivision zoned R1A. Third point, all of the parking for the proposed development is adjacent to existing improved residential parcels within the subdivision. North side parking is across from 2 homes on Arland Way. East side parking is across from 2 homes on Sussex Drive. South side parking is adjacent to a lot owned by an elderly widow who has lived in and enjoyed her home in the subdivision for many years.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, we have read this letter. I mean, if there's some points you'd like to make from the letter, what's stated in the letter, that would be fine, but we have read it. The commission has had a chance to look at the letter.
Okay, so for the purpose of other people being informed about a point of view, this is not appropriate. I have 2 more points.
We're the ones that make the decision, not the
Sure.
other people.
Okay.
Yes, please.
5 is really important. Square Lake and Adams is extremely busy. It's an intersection that's extremely busy, especially during morning and afternoon rush hours. This is due to the ingress and egress points to and from I-75 on at the Adams Road exit. The western access to the property will require a curb cut within 200 feet of the busy intersection. This will trigger backups at the intersection, causing a nuisance to existing residents as well as travelers through the intersection. Possible more accidents as well. Further, the western access to the loading area and the dumpsters is only 24 feet wide, which will require trucks to back into those areas after aligning themselves across Adams Road for access.
Okay, thank you very much.
Whoops. When do you actually make a decision?
It may be tonight.
It will be tonight?
It may be tonight.
Wow.
Maybe
So,
tonight.
as citizens, we have no vote. We have,
Ma'am,
we were blindsided by this.
well, this is not a public hearing.
Yeah.
This is a use by right on this piece of property. And the developer submitted plans, and we're going through those discussions with the developer right now to make those plans as good as they can be and it complies with the zoning ordinance. The traffic consultant, the city's traffic consultant has looked at this plan, has made recommendations. The developer will have to comply with those recommendations.
I am very sorry about all this. That's very unfortunate.
Is there anyone else here that wants to speak on this item?
You're a lot closer to me, man.
Terry Adams, 5970 Sussex. And I appreciate the extra concern about the shrubbery and the blockage on the east side of the building on Sussex. Because our house is 132 feet from our front door to this complex. And I'm 100% against this board approving this. I'm very disappointed, and at any time, cut me off if you have to. I'm very disappointed in not only the zoning board for allowing a structure like this in a total residential area. And I know there isn't anybody on this board that would like this structure built 130-some feet from your front door. And I know your hands are tied because it's in the zoning. But I'm also very disappointed in the applicator, or in the people who are applying, that they are willing to disrupt one of the only country subdivisions in Troy and not care about it. It is extremely disappointing. There's plenty of commercial pieces of property available in Troy, Auburn Hills, or any place else. But they had to pick this piece of property in the heart of a residential area that has been residential and is a very nice residential area, and totally ruin all our houses, plus our house
Right. You're right.
values is all getting hurt. The board who approves it, I know your hands are tied. But as a Troy resident, I'm very disappointed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you want to say anything, sir? Well, if you don't have anything to add, sir, you
No,
don't
I
have
do,
to.
I have a little bit to add. And Terry did a great job, because he lived there a long time. I've only been there a couple of years, it is heaven there. this will, Bob Tortolette, 5900 Adams, but my lot goes back to Sussex. I'm one lot away from this young lady right here, who's right next to that. Right, Marion?
Right.
Okay. And just as long as you guys are considered that you're gonna have, these visitors, ambulance calls, police calls, what do you, can I ask them a question? Or am I gonna address the board?
You have to address the board,
Okay.
sir.
Well, based on what I know of these assisted living, their age are gonna spend $12 an hour. They're gonna limp their way out there. We have no bus services or nothing to get them there. It's gonna be dropped off and back, even more traffic than what you guys are even considering. He's gonna wake up to a garbage truck every morning on a dumpster. And I've only gotten in this meeting today. I didn't know about the original meeting. Nobody said, why do we want to ruin this neighborhood? What is the carrot out in front of the donkey that we're doing this for? Taxes. Our taxes there go down
Wait
and
a
get
minute,
more.
wait a minute. This board has nothing to do with the city taxes.
Oh, I
We
don't
have
know,
an
I'm just
application,
asking.
we have an applicant that has brought a project to us. We've made sure that it does comply with the zoning ordinance. Believe me, we've heard a lot of people get up in front of us and say, hey, I can see this property outside my window, and because I've looked at this property that hasn't been developed for 20 or 30 or 40 years, I'm upset now because a developer wants to come in and develop it. I'm sorry for that.
I think
But-
everybody in the room gets that.
Okay, well then, if everybody in the room gets that, all we're doing is we're reviewing an application that's been legally submitted, and if it complies with the zoning ordinance, then we have an obligation to act on it
And
accordingly.
is it zoned R1A, single family home?
Yes.
Okay. And this is a commercial, we all agree that this is a commercial.
No, we have not all agreed on that. Maybe the residents have have that perspective of what it is, but if you look at the zoning ordinance and you read what's acceptable and allowed in this zoning district, this is an accepted use.
Well, it's a commercial application. You can call it a house if you want, but they're smart guys. They're gonna
Right.
make a lot of money doing this. I get it. All right, that's all I want to say. You guys
Okay.
are gonna do what you gotta do, but
Thank you.
I know this is how everybody in this room feels.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Yes, ma'am.
Hi there, Jennifer Myers, 2770 Lennox. I just want to voice my displeasure as well. I agree with the previous comments. I think this plan is kind of shoehorned onto the site. I think the parking is not very well laid out as well as landscaping. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Yes, sir.
Hey, good evening. I'm Roger Howard, 5726 Sussex Court. I'm a former medical director of Beaumont Troy Hospital, and I currently serve on the board of directors of the Lourdes Senior Community in Waterford. And I think you're asking all the right questions. I'm confused. I don't know, I haven't heard yet exactly what level we're talking about. Assisted living, nursing home, independent apartments, those are all appropriate things. I want to know whether this is going to be licensed by the state of Michigan. The state has some things in their document about the safety of the residents. I'm concerned, as this gentleman also commented about the Central pipeline, how safe that is. The other thing that I read from the Troy zoning ordinance, 2011, for assisted living facilities or facilities like this, if they provide kitchen services with central dining room, I don't know if that's part of the deal. I'm reading it to show that it's a minimum square footage of 2,000 square feet per unit. And I think the consultant's report says they're going to be a little over 1,500 square feet. So I also saw a beautiful little picture of a nice single-story facility. I'm not sure the site has enough square footage to support 93 units if it's entirely single-story. There was some mention of 2 stories, I guess, in the document. I didn't see any pictures of that.
Yes,
So-
there are plans and
Okay.
elevations.
I think, I'm not here to say this is a bad idea. We're gonna need these in the next 20 or 30 years. This is not the site for it, and I'm not gonna repeat some of the arguments, but I think you need to you're asking the right questions. You're considering the neighborhood, you're considering the aura of Troy. I remember in 1981, when the housing market was very soft, and the Oak River people wanted to build, and wanted to abandon their plans and put in a supermarket and office buildings and a strip mall at Coolidge and Long Lake. And the planning commission held tight because that wasn't in the best interest of Troy. And a year later, housing took off, and look at Oak River's a wonderful place. So I think this neighborhood needs to be considered. That's all.
Thank you.
One more thing.
Yes, ma'am.
I think I can talk loud enough that I don't have to get
You
by
have to
the
be
mic.
on the microphone,
I'm
sorry.
I've lived in the area for
Name,
almost.
please.
Marge Qualman,
Thank you.
2914 Lennox, which is very close to Adams Road, but also just south of this proposed development. I've lived in the area for 60 years, and when I first saw this thing, which was rather late because I was gone all summer, it looks very pretty, but it's entirely too big for the area. My husband was recently in nursing homes for over 4 years, different types of facilities, so I know exactly what goes on. I know exactly about the staffing. I know everything pretty much. I've spent all my life there for 4 years. I know about the traffic problems, and this facility proposed is entirely too big for the area.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Steve Balowski, 5850 Sussex, about 3 parcels down south of the area. And I just want to talk a little bit about the history of the area. It seems to me that I've been there since 1971, built our home there on an acre and a half. And there were so many restrictions when we built the home. We had to be back 75 feet off the road. There had to be a certain amount of easement and so on to the side. And now, over the years, the zoning has changed and changed just to squeeze parcels in there more and more and more, closer to the road. And it's just almost like it's at a whim. Just change the zoning, that's all. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Lois Cruz, 2850 Lennox. I just really have 2 points. One, I had a mother-in-law at the one across from Troy High School. When there was an event, there was no place to park. People were parking in fire lanes because they would host family get-togethers. There's no allowance for parking for that kind of an event, and you're gonna have people visiting on a regular basis, and I don't think there's enough parking if this goes through. Second issue, I'd be concerned if I was anywhere around these dumpsters, if you've got food service, what are you gonna have when we start having mice and worse? Because all you got is the birds. I don't think so. So you really do need to consider that.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name's Sal DeLisi, 5856 North Adams. I just got a couple weeks ago learned about this, and I don't see anything in there in regards to, is there a retention pond gonna be back there for the runoff of the rain? I mean, where's that gonna go? And then the overflow of the parking is gonna end up on Sussex roads. We can see that already. There's not gonna be enough parking for a site this big. This is just way too big of a footprint. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Robert Donaldson, 5773 Sussex. I guess what I'm trying to fish through here is these facilities are allowed in R1A.
Yes.
How about R1B?
Lisa, let me look.
Yes.
Yes.
They're allowed R1C.
Yes.
Any place in the city, residents can get together, 2 or 3 lots, throw them together and put up a facility like this anywhere in the city if you're under R1A, B, or C.
Or D or E.
Really?
Correct.
So I can tear down my house and build a 20-unit facility right in the middle of this subdivision. I guess that's my point. Pointing this to the board, you have to use good judgment. This parcel is part of the original parcels of this subdivision. Even though it's on a main intersection, you do have to consider the ambience of the neighborhood and the way it was developed. Never developed for something like this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
I was in the hospital when all of this came about, so it was a big shock. I lived in the subdivision the longest of anybody. Marge and I have been, she's been there just 2 years less than I have. And I can't believe that Troy would let this happen. I'm getting people driving up my driveway because I am the lot right next to this. And they come up the driveway and turn around, and I can't take that. It's not fair. It's not a public place.
Right, your
That's
driveway
what
is
you're
your driveway.
making it. Your name,
Thank you.
ma'am?
Ma'am, what?
What was your name?
You got it. Is there someone else who wanted to speak?
My name is Susan Heeman. I live at 5940 Sussex, very close to this project that's being proposed. And I just want to say thank you to all of my neighbors who came here tonight to fight for us. We love our neighborhood, and to see something like this come in and take over is just not acceptable. One other comment, the other night when I entered my neighborhood regarding the Sunoco pipeline project that's up there, that's such an eyesore for anybody that comes by there. There's a huge Sunoco tanker sitting on the property there. It's very disturbing to see how the whole thing could just blow up right in front of our eyes. That is not a place for a Sunoco tanker truck to be sitting on the corner of Arland and Sussex and Square Lake, sitting there. The property has been totally destroyed as far as I'm concerned there. I mean, I cannot believe that it actually happened and no one in the city of Troy knew what was going on. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Is it this year yet?
No, it's going to be starting in.
And it will be, hopefully be noticed in the paper and such. Okay.
I'm Denise Smith, 2847 Arland Way. I just want to say we haven't lived there that long, a couple of years. It's a great area, great people, and it is very disturbing to hear all of this going on. So I just hope that the commission takes all of the information into consideration and makes a good decision.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Lenore Paxton at 5900 Sussex, about 3 parcels down from this thing. I just want to reiterate and agree totally that everything else aside, the gentleman mentioned that old fogies look out and see a piece of property that hasn't been developed and say, oh, I don't want that. That has absolutely nothing to do with this. What is proper is proper. Homes there, this is a community of homes and homeowners, and we have all lived, or well, at least spiritually, certainly, we have all been living there for a long, long time, enjoying keeping up our properties, and if you watch the development of new homes, fine. But what you have here is an abomination as far as the area. It's not that we don't need nursing facilities, so on and so forth. My goodness, we have them down on South. We've got them down on Adams and 16 Mile Road. My understanding is one is going up where the old Kroger's was on South Boulevard. My point being, an appropriate, as someone here had said, it's the appropriateness of what is being developed, not just people looking out and saying, "Oh, I don't want anything to go up in my field across the street." That has got nothing to do with it, sir. It's the appropriateness and the fact that we, as Troy residents, entrust to the City of Troy, to the Planning Commission, to the Zoning Board, to have some common sense and some respect for us that have lived there, developed our properties, keep our properties up, and pay our taxes and are wonderful citizens. That area is a credit to Troy. That ought to be the first thing to be thinking about, not a place that can be developed, as someone else had said, on pieces of commercial and appropriate property throughout Troy, throughout Warren or Utica or wherever else they want to go. But this is not the place for this, for the myriad of reasons that we have heard today. So I plead with the City of Troy. I plead with the City of Troy to keep this all in mind. These are your people. These are our citizens. It's not appropriate. Please take this into consideration. It's not just people that don't want to see development. That's ridiculous and insulting to us. So there we are. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, with all due respect, ma'am,
Yes.
with all due respect, I refer to no one as an old fogey. In my comments,
The symbolic thing of it.
well, I don't know how you,
It was a symbolic thing. It was symbolic, of course you did.
and what I was telling you is factual. We've seen it happen before.
Of course.
And you can say what you want to say about it not being a factor here, but believe me, it's a factor. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sure.
All right, anyone else? Yes, sir.
Chuck Oman, 2800 Lenox Drive. My family, we own 3 beautiful nursing facilities in Ohio. And we know what goes on in healthcare. The garbage, the traffic, and oh, how we need more of these facilities here, but not in this location. This is totally out of place, and I 1,000 agree with all of these people here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, we'll bring it back to the table for some discussion. Mr. Schick.
Yes, I brought up earlier about the screening, and it's real hard for me to consider voting for this with just a 3-foot berm or with shrubs on it on that one side. I know it meets the ordinance, but it was discussed, maybe there could be a knee wall on top of the berm. Can we get some kind of ruling on that, or so that we could maybe, I can't see the shielding, especially you're gonna have these big trucks backing into this loading area. Their headlights are gonna be, they're gonna be all over that neighborhood. And those headlights are a lot higher than car headlights are off the ground. I mean, this is a slap in the face of these residents. To have to put up with this is bad enough to put up. If this was a light manufacturing facility that might be acceptable in an area and it had a high noise decibels that would be air pollution, we wouldn't vote for it. But there's a light pollution and there's other pollution, traffic pollution and other things with this such a short barrier against the lighting alone in this. Geez, this just isn't right. Just doesn't sit good with me.
All right, thank you. Mr. Schultz.
For Brent and/or our consultant, do we know if in fact this property was originally platted as part of the subdivision that is in that area?
I have to look it up.
The reason I ask is if there are deed restrictions and the homeowners association has enforced those deed restrictions through the years, it could have an effect on what can be built on this property.
It could, but deed restrictions are a private matter, and it would be up to the homeowners association or the neighbors to enforce the deed restrictions. We
That's
don't
what I
enforce
say,
deed
if they
restrictions.
haven't been enforced, the court won't uphold them. But if they have through the years, and there are deed restrictions on this property.
Mr. Stratt.
Either Brent or our consultant, what other items could possibly be built on this site that could actually be worse than having this facility?
It's, I can just list well, anything that's permitted in the R1A district. I don't know, it's up to the beholder in terms of what's worse or what's better for this
Okay, yeah.
location.
And some of these are with corresponding standards, so it's,
Right. Did you have a list? Could you just name a few?
a school is a special use, a place of worship, a church is special use.
All special
Family
use?
daycare home is a permitted use, a daycare is a special use. I mean, and then single-family residential.
Yeah. My concern is this, that frankly, it seems that the developer took a standard floor plan, a standard building, and plopped this on the site without any consideration of the site constraints. And it seems to me that it just does not work. I don't like the idea of the parking wrapping all the way around and the accessibility that that was mentioned about having rear access with respect to codes, et cetera. I don't buy that. The activity areas are on the back side of the area, and you've got the receiving area that they admittedly said they don't want people coming through that area. So to me, the site just does not work. This is not, they just took a standard building and plucked that on the site and tried to make it work. And to me, I would not be voting for this, frankly. I can't see it. I don't think that it fits. I'm not trying to actually, I'm sympathetic to the neighbors and everything else, but this does not fit on this site.
Mr. Schultz.
Ben or Brent, what, if any, deficiencies from the ordinance does this proposed development have?
The only deficiencies is the screening along Sussex Drive, and in our opinion, the site circulation in terms of parking and location of the front entrance.
So far as ordinance requirements?
Setback, height, bulk, number of rooms, etc., parking, it meets the ordinance requirements.
Can I ask Ms. Lancaster a question?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Lancaster, if a proposal meets the ordinance requirements, is it even legal for us to not approve it? Without,
It is not.
if it's not a special use?
It is not. Once you have, this is not a zoning issue, this is a site plan issue, it is a use by right. The ordinance, which was changed a few years ago, there were many, many meetings all over the city. For a year, council looked at the ordinance over and over again with many public meetings, and this was adopted as law. The law says that if they make site plan approval, and you agree with that, you can ask them voluntarily to make changes, for instance, more landscaping. But if they meet the requirements of the law, which is our zoning ordinance, by right, they have a right to site plan.
And just clarification for me, that is state law, not a city ordinance, correct? That says that if it
State
meets the
law,
requirements?
It is state law, yes it is.
Thank you.
That's what zoning codes are all about.
Mr. Trent?
Follow up, Ms. Lancaster. If for some reason we don't approve this, can the applicant then sue the city?
Applicant can sue the city.
What is the likelihood that he would win?
If we have a law that we're not complying with, a very big likelihood they can win. Because we have approved a law by council, which is how our laws are approved, that meets the requirements of the state law. And if we don't follow our own laws, we could be subject to not only damages to the developer, but punitive damages and other damages that we would have to, for not following our own law.
Thank you.
Yes, Frank?
Is the zoning ordinance a strict document, or is it open to some interpretation by the commission?
It's open, not for site plan, things like setbacks, where you've got a number in there, things like how many heights, those are not open to interpretation, those are what the law sets out. Certain things may be open to interpretation, like maybe what kind of landscaping you can have, but most of the requirements that we're talking about tonight are actual physical requirements.
Mr. Stryker?
Chester, follow up on that. If they were to sue us, how long do you think it would take to go into court and to have that executed?
Oh, probably a year to 2 years. A year is probably pretty optimistic, more like 2 years.
Okay,
Plus,
thank
that's not counting the appeals to the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court, and the remands and the further appeals.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Mr. Kempen?
Yeah, I have a question on density. I mean, this is a pretty heavy development. Are there any restrictions on density, and exactly what are they?
It's based on the lot area, based on the lot area. I have it here. It's 1,500 square feet per unit. So you take the total lot area divided by 1,500. That's the number of beds that they can have or units they can have, and that equals their 92.
Did that include the pipeline area that was used?
It subtracted the pipeline area. That was taken out of the site area. Yes. It's a straight formula.
Anything else?
Mr. Chair, if I may? If I may?
What is it, sir?
I'd like to address the issue along Sussex. We would be willing to do whether it be a continuous wall or a combination of wall and berming and evergreens all along Sussex, so that could all be screened properly. The definition of heavily vegetated, I don't want to leave that up to anybody's own, definition. But with a combination of berms and screening walls and evergreens, I think that we can achieve a fair amount of, the full amount actually, of screening along the eastern property line. In any other way, whether it be lot coverage, parking spaces and all, we do meet the ordinance. And from a practical standpoint, please understand that the design is something that needs to be practical moving forward for the building, for the property. So the location of parking, where it is in proximity to entrances, ingress and egress to the building, it's very important to us that they are located in areas that work from a functional standpoint.
Well, I think that's one of the questions here tonight. I mean, if you had a different property, you wouldn't have your parking oriented and located as you do on this property. Your parking is located because of the configuration of the property and the size of the building. And so that was one of the discussions is it the best use and the best location for the parking relative to where your front door is? I have a question for you as far as when do you get your deliveries? During what time of day do your deliveries come and how often do they come?
The deliveries come, they do not come frequent. They come generally during the day. They're scheduled so that there's gonna be residents, you're gonna have residents of Troy that are gonna live in this building. And they're elderly residents, and they do not like the trash being picked up at 6 in the morning any more than anybody else in the area wants. It is a residential type of activity. Its impact as far as how you buffer from residential to commercial, I mean, this fits the bill for all of that as far as traffic impact. It's one of the lowest traffic impact. When you look at analysis, this is not my opinion. But to answer your question directly, deliveries they're prohibited too early or too late in the day.
Can you give us just some bookend times? Is it?
I
Mr.
would
Chair?
say not earlier than 9, not later than 5.
Mr. Chair, we actually have an ordinance that restricts hours, and our police will investigate and ticket if they're not the dumpsters are picked up outside of those hours. I believe our hours are 7 to 10 a.m. at night, 10 p.m. at night, but I mean, I can check for you, but in terms of dumpsters and how we have code enforcement, which is not your issue
Right,
here.
right.
But we have other ways to control things like noise, and if the officers just recently ticketed somebody that was picking up a dumpster too early in the morning. So we have other laws, code enforcement, to control those situations.
But what I think I heard from you, 9 to 5 is what your plan is.
Absolutely. Concerns in that regard, we have those concerns in common.
All right, thank you. Yes, Mr. Shepard.
Yes. In other words, is the applicant saying that when he first got up here and started talking, is he saying that he's willing to have additional screening, a height on a wall or something to protect the residents on Sussex Drive?
That's what I understood him to say. Is that correct, sir?
That is correct. And we would work with the planning department.
Mr. Stratt?
Mr. Chairman, I have a little bit of a problem with, as I said, with the site to begin with, because I think it was a standard building that was plucked on the site, which is not really taking into consideration the site constraints. More importantly than anything else, it may comply, but I think it's a dangerous situation here. I think that the parking and the people that have to walk all the way around, it could be a very dangerous situation. That's the reason why I am not going to vote for this. I think it's not a good solution at all.
Thank you. Mr. Krenn?
We talked about the berm or shielding from people in Sussex. What about that home on Arland? That's still exposed, the parking goes right, the headlights could go right into there, across the street onto that property. Is there gonna be more screening on that along with Sussex?
We would not have a problem with working with the city on that.
Follow up on the screening. Directed to the planning director and consultant. Generally, like Mr. Schultz has reminded us so many times, we shouldn't approve something unless we see everything in black and white on the print. And my question is, do we need to have what was spoken here by the developer for those screenings on a drawing? Or would it be a follow-up and a final review by your department?
What are you comfortable with?
I'd rather see it in writing on a drawing.
I think you've answered your question.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Mr. Schultz?
Could I make a statement to the audience?
Sure.
There's, one of the people that spoke tonight indicated that this piece of property was originally platted as part of a subdivision or a development. If in fact it was, and if in fact there are deed restrictions on those lots, and if in fact the homeowners association has duly enforced those deed restrictions throughout the years, then your homeowners association or associations may have some recourse to have effect on this. The city of Troy does not. We have a development that meets our zoning ordinance, and by state law, we cannot refuse to allow it to be built. So I would suggest that if in fact this property was part of a subdivision, that the homeowners association needs to start doing their due diligence.
Well, gentlemen, make a motion?
I'd like to postpone this item until we see the full screening on Sussex and Arlen.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
In the form of a motion?
It's in the form of a motion, yes.
Anything else?
If there's any, there's a, well,
I mean, if you want to just postpone
yeah, I'll
it
just
based on that.
postpone it based on that.
Okay. Do I have a second? Mr. Shep.
Mr. Stratt indicated perhaps the placement of the building could be improved. Perhaps the applicant could investigate that. He said it, Mr. Stratt said it a couple times. Maybe they could at least investigate that. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Mr. Stratt.
Well, you're asking me to say something.
No.
I already spoke. And I think it would be an excellent idea for them to reconfigure that right. I really think that is just a standard building that was just plucked on the site.
I'd like to amend my, my postponement to include Mr. Stratt's remarks about the building arrangement on the site.
I'm sorry, would you
I'd like to
read-
include Mr. Stratt's comments in my postponement as a reason for postponing. I think there can be a better solution, especially for parking and entrance for the.
Would you also be willing to add to your motion a date certain so that everyone, even though this is not a public hearing, so that everyone in the room will know when this will be back on our docket?
I would. We have a calendar here that we can, I'll defer to our planning department.
Pulling one up right now. But just want to inform the applicant, we'll need at least 2 weeks to review it internally, so within at least a month from either the November 26th meeting or the December 10th meeting.
December 26th, joint.
That's
It's at 6 o'clock.
so if you go to November 26th, I would need plans submitted to us at least by November 11th. If you go to the December 10th meeting, I would need plans by December 2nd. No, I'm sorry, I would need plans by November 25th for that.
It's really rushing it.
Well, let's let the developer.
That's what I was asking.
I'll have to get with my consultants and see if we can meet those timelines.
Well, let's set it to the far date then.
Yep. December 10th.
Yep.
Where's the 26th relative to the holiday Thanksgiving?
It's 2 days before Thanksgiving.
It's Tuesday before Thanksgiving.
Yes.
So 2 weeks before that would be the 12th. 11th.
2 days for that would be November 11th, which I would need the plans submitted by that date
By November 11th.
to get on the 26th agenda.
So November 11th submittal, resubmittal for a 26 meeting.
Unfortunately, though, I don't want to be a situation where we schedule for the 26th, you don't get plans in by the 11th, and the neighbors come out and you're not on the agenda. So I think if you,
I'll make that happen. I'll have them in by the 11th.
Now I'll put the date certain as the meeting to be postponed until November 26th.
Yes, could you just kind of can you summarize or reread?
Sorry, Kathy.
Postpone to November 26th to cover, to have the applicant come in with screening plan for Sussex and Arlen, to consider the building arrangement for better parking and for better parking and entrance doors.
Thank you.
I think that was just one.
Yeah.
I believe there is only one resident. Is that
Yeah,
good?
it's very good. Thank you.
Who's
Thank you,
second?
Kathy.
You still second? Okay.
yes.
All right. Now we are, Kathy.
Mr. Kritz?
Yes.
Mr. Shepke?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Surratt?
Yeah.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
No, I believe he's met all the requirements under the ordinance, and he's entitled to approval by this commission.
Mr. Kempen?
Yes.
All right, we'll see you back on the 26th.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You want to recess?
Yes.
All right.
Might as well go 5 or 10 minutes, because we're not gonna get anything done.
5 minutes, guys.
5 minutes.
I'm gonna go.
No, not yet.
Dequindre, Section 24, currently zoned R1D, one-family residential district. Mr. Carlisle.
Yes, thank you. This is either the third or fourth time the matter has been before the planning commission. I thank the neighbors for having patience going through this process to come to this, to come to the point where we are now. Since the last planning commission meeting, the applicant took the advice from the planning commission and actually held a neighborhood meeting. This was held on October 5th. The applicant has resubmitted their plan. In our discussion with the applicant, this is a kind of a plan that does have great influence from the neighbors and specifically what they're asking for. I'm going to quickly highlight what the plan is, what the plan shows. The plans that were submitted were a little unclear to us, so I want to clarify for everyone in the audience exactly what the applicant is proposing. Starting in this corner, moving to this X location, that existing fence is going to remain in its current location. From this corner, wrapping around to this location, it's going to be a 4-foot high chain link fence. From this location to this location, the existing fence is going to remain based on the request of the neighbors. From this X to this X is going to be a new 4-foot high chain link fence that's going to match the fence that's being located in this location. From this location to this location along Arlen, I think it is Arlen Way. I'm sorry, not Arlen Way. Auburn. It's going to be, sorry, I get my sites confused. It's going to be landscaping as shown on the site plan. And from this location to 60 foot on Dequindre is going to be a 6-foot white vinyl fence. Again, all the improvements are going to be along the property line, and there was some confusion about where the actual location of the fences are. All the fences are going to be located along the property line. Based on the discussion we had with the applicant, we do support the proposed agreement with the property owner and the adjacent owners. Our only condition is that the use be limited to no later than 9 o'clock at night.
That it?
Yeah.
Any questions for Mr. Carlisle? Yes, Mr. Hudson.
Mr. Carlisle, you did not mention it, but I assume from your explanation that the tree plan, which called for removal of dead trees, et cetera, to be complied with, subject to, of course, the fence line.
Yes, they've shown us, I'm sorry I mentioned that, that was, nothing has changed from that from their earlier submittal. They are going to have, I believe, a 25-foot tree collar, and based on discussions, they are, with adjacent properties, they're actually going to clear the underbrush and keep the mature trees standing.
Anything else from Mr. Carlisle? Petitioner here, would you like to step forward?
Sure.
Do you have anything to add to the discussion, or?
I want to thank the Planning Commission for your direction. We had a very positive meeting as neighbors on October the 5th. We spent about an hour together talking through possibilities, and we came up with, we had 9 households that were represented at that meeting, and we had a unanimous decision amongst us between property owners as well as the church at the solution that's being presented this evening.
Very good. Mr. Robinson, anything to add? Any questions for the petitioner? Mr. Schultz.
In your first meeting, you said you had to have a fence so that the children would not wander away from the playing fields. That obviously has changed?
No, sir. We still will be having the chain link by filling in the existing chain link. Most of the yards have a chain link already. So by filling in the gaps between the existing chain link fencing, we'll be able to achieve on the western and northern boundaries of that property the secured area that we need to have for the younger kids to be playing in that
Except for
area.
2 homes and a street.
As you move farther towards the east, we will have that open landscaped area, but we will be able to, our belief is that we're going to be able to organize play in such a way that, that we can keep the younger age kids towards that north and west end of the property.
Okay.
Anything else? Thank you, and thank you for your efforts in working with the homeowners.
Absolutely, thank you.
Again, this is not a public hearing, but if there's a representative of the homeowners that would like to say anything, now is the time. If not,
I will be representative. We were at the meeting with the church, and there was, there are 12 of us there, I think, in total, and homeowners. There were a few that couldn't make it that day, but the neighbors had met previously, talked about some of the options, and we fully support this plan. We think it's terrific, and we're really pleased that we were able to get together and work something out that works for everybody. So
Well, I want to thank everybody for their efforts and their patience. Sounds like a win-win situation.
you as well. So,
Thank you.
yes, thank you.
Thanks.
Name, oh, sorry, Colleen Geyer, 268. I should know that by now.
All right, bring it back to the commission for any discussion or a motion. Mr. Evans?
I will happy to offer the motion. Resolved that special use approval and preliminary site plan approval for the improvements proposed for Faith Lutheran Church, west side of DeQuinder, north of Big Beaver, 37,635 DeQuinder, section 24. Currently zoned R1D, one family residential district, be granted subject to the following conditions. Number one, hours of field use are limited to no later than 9 p.m. Fencing shown on sheet 1 is binding. Landscape plans shall be revised to be made consistent with fencing shown on sheet 1 prior to final site plan approval.
Second. Second by Mr. Krant. Any more discussion?
Mr. Shepke?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
No.
Mr. Strack?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Kempen?
Yes.
Mr. Krant?
Yes.
All right. Wherever they went, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mr. Schultz, do you want
I simply feel that there needs to be a security barrier along the entire north property line, and that two homeowners basically extorted land out of the church, and I don't agree with that.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Other business, item number 10. Potential development project, the Highlands property.
Excuse us.
1055 West Square Lake Road, southwest corner of Square Lake Road and Crooks Road, section 8, currently zoned RC Research Center District. We'll be giving the
I'll
report.
introduce this. This is a study item that was requested by the applicant, the owner of the Highlands property located at 1055 West Square Lake, which you see up here on the aerial. Kind of an interesting property. Zoned RC, but it's kind of like a lonely little parcel here. Insofar as it's triangular in shape, it's bounded on the east by Crooks, on the north by Square Lake, on the south by I-75. And these are three really, really wide rights of way. I mean, you can see that they're boulevarded here. They're about as wide as you can get here. So it is part of Northfield in terms of the master plan classification, but it is relatively isolated. It's also abuts residential to the north. 2.3 acres in area. It's Zone RC Research Center. There's an existing two-story building on the site. It's somewhat unique. It was used previously for a research center, which one would expect. The first floor ceilings are plus or minus about 20 feet in height, and there's a second-story office that are your typical ceiling heights for office. But the 20-foot ceilings on the first floor really lend themselves to a lot of different types of uses. And they've been marketing this property, I want to say 7 years, actively marketing it, according to the realtor, and they've had a limited success. And now they've got a gymnastics club that's interested in utilizing the facility, at least the first floor, for gymnastics, which we define in our ordinance as indoor commercial recreation, which is not permitted in the RC district. So they're looking at potential options for if to proceed in the direction of utilizing the first floor for indoor commercial recreation, gymnastics. What are their options? And we really see there as being three options. One is to rezone the property to a district that permits indoor commercial recreation. There are three: community business, general business, and IB. Now, you'll notice that the zoning districts in the area, anything that would be done here would be somewhat of a spot zone. If I pull the map down a little further, the zoning map a little further, there's a GB parcel down here, which was a PUD that we've recently rezoned. So you'd be looking at something that's kind of a spot zone, but then again, as I indicated, this is a somewhat isolated parcel, because it's very unique that it's kind of stands alone like that. Now, if they rezone to CB or GB, research center is not permitted. So if they 3 or 4 years down the line, the lease terminates, now they probably have to go back. If they got RC, someone interested wants to do RC, they got to rezone back. If they go IB permits everything but the kitchen sink. It also permits some uses that we probably don't want in this location, some more heavier. So if they went down the road of IB, they're probably looking at a conditional rezoning, which we can't request of them. They can voluntarily submit. Now, there's been in the past, the Planning Commission has dealt with, the last time we dealt with a potential conditional rezoning application that did not have a site plan, there was some feathers ruffled, and we'd have to kind of look at that situation, because they're not proposing to do anything to the property. They just want to reuse the building. So they do some internal work, but nothing to the property. So that's option one, is rezone, whether it's conventional or conditional. That's option one. Option two is amend the zoning ordinance text to basically amend the RC district to allow indoor commercial recreation. The problem, or not the problem, something to keep in mind is we're not just dealing with this property, we're dealing with all similarly zoned property. So the question is it appropriate to amend the zoning ordinance to allow indoor commercial recreation in RC, on all RC properties? I don't know the answer to that. I'm throwing it out there. That's what we're talking, the meeting tonight. But that's option two, is a text amendment. So the first is a map amendment. The second is a text amendment. The third is a use variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals. There's a very high standard. Mr. Krentz on the Zoning Board of Appeals. The city of Troy has only in 2011, relatively recently, even been able to consider use variances. The standard for use variance is undue hardship, and basically one of the standards is the property cannot be used as zoned. There are some marketing arguments and some real estate arguments, but I think that's a very, very high standard and a very high burden for them to demonstrate. And I don't know if they'd be successful, but if they want to go that route, good luck. So those are our three options. Just anecdotally, I think of the three, the one that's probably seems the most palatable moving forward is probably one of the rezonings. But that's what you're here for, is to talk about this. So that's the introduction, and Mr. Chairman, it's all yours.
Any questions for Mr.?
I've got some comments if you're ready for that.
Absolutely.
I've got a couple of viewpoints. One is of course, we like to have buildings occupied. It's good for the city of Troy, it's good to the landlord. This one, though, is an isolated island amongst R1B, community, research center, and office. That's spot zoning, and it's classic. I don't like that. We've got a macro view of the master zone, master plan that we did 5 years ago. Doesn't fit into it at all. And I'm afraid that if we do something to tamper with that RC in that one parcel, well, we all know that what we do at one parcel doesn't mean that anybody else can do the same thing with a similar parcel. That argument's going to come up again and again. I don't like that. I don't like a conditional rezoning. That's doing indirectly what we might not want to be able to do directly. I don't like amending that zoning to IB or GB or anything else, because that's going to spread the disease of this one spot throughout the entire city. As much as the landlord is not going to like what I'm going to say, is that it's a marketing problem, it's not a zoning problem, and I would be opposed to any kind of change in the zoning of that parcel.
Mr. Schultz.
I recall when this building was originally constructed, and I believe if we go back and look at the specs on it, it is, for the size of the building, it is grossly deficient in parking. And if anyone has had anything to do with the gymnastics facility, regardless of how they stand up and slam their fist on the table and say we have enough parking, none of them ever do. And my concern is if gymnastics goes in on the first floor of this building and then somebody wants to rent the second floor for something, there's no place to park. And as far as I'm concerned, it's not even adjacent to RC because there's a freeway between them. It is adjacent only to residential property with Square Lake Road. And I have to agree with Mr. Hudson. I would have to have some real convincing done to me to do any kind of rezoning on this property at this time.
Anyone else? Strat?
Is that your comment? Did I understand that you would recommend rezoning?
I said of the three,
Yeah.
rezoning is the most palatable.
How, yeah, I heard that, yeah.
I do want to say that we have not gone through and done any sort of analysis on the rezoning, have not gone through the standards, have not gone through parking calculations. This is simply, before we went down that road and advised the applicant which way to go, we wanted the planning commission to give some direction to the applicant. So in regards to what we recommend rezoning and not rezoning, we haven't done that analysis yet.
No, it seems to me that I was very interested in that piece of property myself. Excellent view looking down towards town. You can see everything on that top level. I think it's a great piece of property for office use, but I don't know, unless we go through the evaluation, I think I would go along with your recommendation, or not your recommendation, the possible solution, the best, I think, of the three, but, go ahead.
What I told the applicant was they would get a very frank comments from the planning commission, and you're not gonna be shy, you're gonna share your views, and that's what they're here for, so.
Oh, yeah.
Is there anything that you gentlemen would like to share with us as we consider the options?
Sure. My name's Ron Reynolds. Oh, sorry. Good evening. I'm Ron Reynolds. I'm a land use attorney. My office is at 31780 Telegraph Road in Bingham Farms, Michigan. And I represent Hilux Corporation, or Controls, I should say. Mike Topolewski is here, who works for Hilux, and also Joe Banier, who is a principal at Signature, who's been marketing the property for 6 or 7 years. We came, basically seeking a solution. I met with Brent and Ben, talked to them on the phone several times. The property is not moving for RC right now. And it may be a vestige of the current market we're in, we don't know. It's well suited for RC. RC is going in the other areas of the district, not where we are. We've had several people look at the building and not follow up with any hard offers. And like I said, the owner's sitting on this building for 6 or 7 years. So we looked and we tried to be creative and say, how can we allow this owner to get this building active again, at the same time respect the Troy's ordinances and master plan primarily, which I think RC is well suited under the master plan for this property, for the Northfield District. And our hope is at some point in time, there will be a market for RC for this property. Again, the building was built with that in mind, with the unique first floor, second floor configuration. We were looking around in this more southern part of Troy. The city council adopted the IB plan. When I read that, it seemed to be kind of what was going on in this area, which is just that one little island area. When I say this area, that there was recognized a need for transitioning from older uses to newer uses and having more flexible use of a property. I talked to Brent about that, and his first comment to me was, but that also allows for traditional industrial uses, which we have no interest in trying to force feed into there, quite frankly. What we're trying to do is find a more flexible use of this property so that it can eventually, when the market returns on that site for RC, that it can be transitioned back to RC. I don't see any, in the Northridge master plan, It talks about uses also that are complementary to the area, complementary to the citizens. We talked about the fact that the gymnastics school is more of an after-school evening program. And so the use of the roads and things like that, use of parking would be different than if it were from 9 to 5. We talked about the fact that even if we found some office uses for the second floor, and they would be complementary uses because they'd be using the buildings at different times. So our goal was to find some way to respect the zoning and the master plan in Troy, while at the same time giving this owner some relief and trying to get a building that's been fallow with a big sign saying, "Rent me for 6 or 7 years on I-75, an opportunity to be used." And as far as the marketing background and things like that, Joe's here, he could discuss that with you. That we have, as I understand, chased down several leads over the last several years. And then Mike can also discuss any other questions that you may have. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Evans.
I know Brent has to leave here shortly, but have we not rezoned parcels before from one zoning to another and then specifically restricted certain uses, like dry clean factories and all that type of thing? Thought we'd done that.
We made a recommendation on an application at the corner of 14 Mile and Stevenson at the northwest corner that basically was scheduled for a public hearing, and the day it was supposed to go to city council, it was acquired by another company, and they said, put the rezoning on hold. So we put it on hold, and it's been on hold ever since. They have no interest in rezoning as of today. So it wasn't rezoned, but we went down the road and made a recommendation on it.
Mr. Sabanon said we ruffled a few feathers in that procedure. Those were my feathers that you were ruffling.
I don't think I used anyone's name, Mr.
No, you did
President.
not. But I hope Ben remembers.
I just want to clarify a point. The limitation on uses is simply through the conditional rezoning process, and it has to be offered by the applicant. A straight rezoning, you cannot put limitations on uses. Another case where we've limited the use is the hotel, the Marriott hotels. They're limited to only lodging uses as part of their conditional rezoning. So there is precedent.
I remember that,
Yes.
yeah. Yeah, one of the things that we're gonna be confronted with, and it's not gonna be the first nor the last, is problem sites. And really, we have to be flexible. And I don't know what, the flexibility, how flexible can we be, but it seemed like we were trying to be flexible even with that particular site that we were just talking about on Stevenson Highway. And I think that maybe the conditional rezoning might be another possibility. I don't know if you've discussed it with the owners or not.
We did.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah, and I agree, you hit the nail on the head. If this was an easy site, they would have submitted an application by now. We'd be talking. This is not that's why we wanted to bring the planning commission in,
Right.
because this is a challenging site. Mr. Hudson's absolutely correct. This is a spot zone. It's a definition of a spot zone. Pure and simple. No disagreement.
Yeah.
The complicating factor is, it's got a 300-foot right-of-way here and it's isolated. Now, it is, I already went over this, but, it's isolated. But Mr. Hudson's correct. The master plan calls out Northfield as being basically this, and it does include it. It's included in our master plan. It's master plan for RC, for this. This isn't easy, because no one wants to see a vacant building, but I don't want to see a rezoning that flies in the face of the master plan and is incompatible. So where's the balance? That's why we're here talking about it this evening.
Well, flexibility is a key.
I have a question in regards to fitness centers. A lot of companies put in fitness centers of varying sizes. Is there any specific restrictions size-wise on what's allowable versus not allowable?
If you're speaking to like a company, let's say they decided to put a gym in the corner for the employees, we'd consider that to be ancillary accessory. and they can do it. It's an amenity, it's something for the employees. No one's going to drive there, work out, and then drive home. They're gonna go there to work out in their lunch time or after work, and then go home. So it's not gonna generate additional traffic, so.
So this would
It's not a
be
commercial.
foreign access.
Correct.
What you're speaking to is actually a separate use than what they're proposing to do, so it's not the same
Okay.
use.
I was just wondering if there's some magic barrier, but it sounds like the commercial use would be a good barrier there.
Mr. Schultz, did you have a comment?
No, I was just saying that the fitness center within an office building would not be a commercial endeavor, it would be an ancillary use.
Mr. Stratton?
Yeah, I was just gonna comment, I forgot what I was gonna say.
I'll butt-
I hadn't seen your phone.
I'll butt in. I'd like to dovetail on what Mr. Stratton was talking about, and that's the flexibility. First of all, as you know, I don't like spot zoning. I think it's wrong to do spot zoning. That said, I also dislike seeing our buildings vacant for year after year after year and not used. I like the idea of a conditional rezoning. My question, I guess, to staff would be, if we have a conditional rezoning for a specific use for that property, when that building is sold to someone else, does that conditional use go with the land?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Someone raised a good point. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say, we haven't.
You may forget again. What do you want to say?
You didn't catch him in this zone.
What I'm saying is that they've got a special condition that they're even, according to what I heard, was evening affairs, where they're not, even if there was a conflict, as Ms. Schultz talked about in terms of the amount of parking, though I don't think it is, but if they did have a problem with that, it's still not a conflict because of the timing. Therefore, it would be a special use. That's the only way I can see it working out.
And I would say the devil's in the details. We don't know, we haven't done a full bore review. We wanted to do this first and kind of as a cursory and overview. Is the parking gonna work for gymnastics? I don't know. I don't know if they've really done a detailed study yet. That would have to be, we'd have to have insurances that it's gonna work. We don't wanna set anyone up for failure.
Yeah.
Sir, you've been patiently waiting back there, raising your hand, so please step
Thank you.
forward.
My name's Fred Laws. I've lived in Troy for 42 years. I live at 581 Colebrook. I work for a company called Mahindra, and we make cars. We're currently looking at this property as a research and development center. It's perfect for our use.
Let me introduce you to the realtor.
I met him. And we're considering this property and another property.
Could you speak into the microphone, sir?
Oh, sure.
It's not amplifying, so it is working.
Okay.
It records.
Place that we need. We're considering this property and another property in Farmington Hills. We're just starting up. We're hiring engineers, and we intend to build prototypes, probably 5 a year. And eventually, Mahindra will market cars in the U.S. The thought of this property becoming not available is troublesome. For me, as a Troy resident and as a CFO. So, there is a market. The issue is, can we buy it for a reasonable price?
Sounds like this discussion is really between you, John.
Just as I understand it, his company approached us about 3 weeks ago. We're open to it, but like we said, we've been here 6 or 7 years waiting for someone to put an offer on the property. They haven't put an offer on it, and we understand that there's some approvals that are going on at their corporate office, and they're looking at other sites as well. So, and a conditional rezoning, because we would retain the RC character, wouldn't stop that. But in the meantime, I would say, put an offer in writing, we want to talk.
It would also.
But that's how you do real estate deals.
It would
You put
also,
offers in writing.
This is the
Okay.
real estate office.
All right, well, I guess we'll hold tight till we'll see what happens with you all. I mean, at this point, I'm not sure, it sounds like there could be an offer forthcoming. If not, we've talked about some options that you have. I don't know if I can assume what you just said at the microphone was that you'd be willing to request a conditional rezoning or not?
Yes, and I should have said that. I made that request to Brent, that was one of the options. I brought that up. Yeah.
Well, again, that's one of the options. Based on the comments you heard tonight, that sounds like at least one of the more favorable options. But there's due diligence on our half as well. Mr. Schultz?
Just to reiterate, I personally could not support a request to rezone this property to CB, GB, or IB at this time. It just opens it to a Pandora's box of things that do not belong across the street from residential properties.
All right. Any other, yes, Mr. Edmonds?
I would tend to agree with that, too. That's my thinking right now.
Okay.
In favor of rezoning.
I certainly feel the same way, as you can tell.
I really think that really this option that the state has given us of conditional really is a flexible, the only flexible tool we really have. In being flexible, I think.
All right. Yes, Mr. Edmonds?
Just one quick question for Ms. Lancaster. If we were to rezone this under a conditional rezoning, could we be subject to a suit under spot zoning?
I think it just depends on the way the agreement read. I think you would be safe. I think, as Mr. Stratt pointed out, the courts are kind of opened up between plan unit developments and, which we used to call contract zoning, but we're now allowed to call it that. So there, I think you'd be all right.
All right, any other comments, questions? You gentlemen good for this evening? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Okay, item number 11. Joint Planning Commission Council meeting scheduled for November 26, 2013.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, I don't want to keep the planning commission too long. I think we have put in front of you a short list of items that we're on the agenda to discuss as part of the joint meeting. My understanding, this was mostly collaborated by the city manager's office with some input from the planning commission, from the city council. The issue is we only have an hour, and we've already have 5 items on the agenda. A couple of these are intended to be more informational. The planning commission is going to basically tell the city council what direction they're headed. For example, the sober living facility, there shouldn't be much discussion because the planning commission has already considered that and has forwarded a recommendation on the city council for that. Some of the other issues, such as the master plan, as well as the maximum height in the GB district, those are really issues that are going to be addressed as part of the upcoming master plan amendment. The other issues about infill development, Big Beaver, et cetera, those maybe are open for more discussion. What we're looking for is, the intent is that staff is going to kind of facilitate and drive the meeting, just because we only have an hour and want to make sure we can get through these topics. The first question is, based on the number of items on the agenda, is there anything specific that you want us to target or mention for any of these particular items? And the second thing is, are there any additional topics that you think you'd like us to add to this already heavy agenda, and what should those be? I don't think we need a conclusion tonight. Obviously, we have a little time before we have that meeting scheduled right before November, but once the planning commission at least start thinking about these items. Sorry.
Mr. Grant?
I just want to, I would say, and I realize we got to cut it short, but I think signs need to be addressed.
Someone else? Mr. Hudson, did you have a?
I was going to suggest signs also.
And I would too.
I was too.
All right,
To
that's
get it
loud and clear.
Mr. Schultz?
I guess so far as any feedback or focus that we would like since we're looking at 5, now 6 agenda items, and we have no information as to what the city manager and/or city council want to discuss about them, it's real hard for us to give you any feedback. So, and by the way, we have one meeting between this meeting and that meeting. We have a regular meeting the second Tuesday in November, I believe. So if we're going to discuss this, it's going to have to be at a regular meeting.
Okay, Mr. Evans?
I can't believe that the city management and the city council are not aware of what has been decided by this commission on sober living facilities.
It hasn't gone to them yet.
It has not gone to them at all? No. Well, they read the minutes, don't they?
It hasn't gone to them yet.
Okay, well, thank you.
I guess I would like to support what Mr. Schultz was saying, that we have very little information here. There could be a wide range of areas to discuss in each one of these topics, and is there something more specific about these topics that they want to discuss so we can be prepared to talk about them? It's just a very broad agenda without much focus.
We have, this is the direction handed by the city manager's office. We have not had any direct contact with the city council themselves in terms of what they're looking for. The direction based on the city management office is these are the 5 items that they want some discussion about. What that means, we haven't got any clarification on that. I can go back to them again and say we.
You've asked, and they, what did, I mean,
They're open for discussion on the items is what the direction we're getting. So I will go back to them, we'll go back to them and have a further discussion about exactly what the intent of this is going to be and what the direction that they're looking for moving forward on this is going to be.
Yes, Mr. Evans?
In terms of item number 5, I'm assuming that the background is that the 1-800 mini storage and its conflict, allowing for 5 stories, and the conflict with the master plan that allows only 4 stories. And I've spoken to Brent before, and he said, well, the master plan is conceptual. Well, I understand what that means, but I think at some point, when we take up the master plan, we need to address that issue one way or the other and be more specific.
Yeah, and one of the intents of the update of the master plan is we're actually going to have Rochester Road is going to be one of our focused areas. We're actually going to have sort of a neighborhood workshop in terms of what the uses are, what the intensity of the uses are, some bulk requirements. So the Rochester Road is going to be a focus of that of the update.
Mr. Schultz?
Well, if you've asked once or more than once for additional information on this and have not been provided any, and this is going to be a very probably politically incorrect statement, but it sounds very much to me like this is a trip to the woodshed for the Planning Commission. It's not a joint meeting, it's being told what we are to do or what we're not to do. And I'm not even sure I care to attend, because we've asked the city manager to come in and even introduce himself multiple times, and he hasn't seen fit to do that, so.
He did.
He did come in.
He did?
I think you were in Russia.
I was probably in Russia then, I didn't see
They're
that.
in China.
There was no in-depth discussion, though, about anything.
Mr. Stratton?
I'm going to piggyback on, we had a joint meeting at the fire station. Yeah, 2 of them. And actually, very little was really accomplished
There
from
was
my.
no discussion, we were told.
Yeah, exactly.
Which
And
I think is
I
what's
don't know
gonna
if
happen
that
in that.
really is, I can remember distinctly both those 2. I hope that that's not going to be the case.
We did have a joint meeting probably about 3 or 4 years ago, and it kind of concentrated on the redevelopment of the Kmart area. And there was a little give and take, but again, it had the earmarks of a spanking.
Hope we're not going to have that. Who's going to be actually leading this?
Staff has been directed to lead it. So I don't know if that means the city manager, Mark Miller, Brent Salvadon, I'm not sure who the person is, but to get through 6 items, there's going to be some sort of facilitation.
Yeah. Well, I hope it's successful, that's all.
Any other thoughts or comments? All right. You have enough?
No, but I'll make something up.
This meeting's going to be here.
That's what I've been told.
That's when we've been, yeah, it's supposed to be
We
here.
propose to get 9 planning commissioners and all the city council members at this table.
Last I heard was here.
It was a lower cut for True before.
The issue
It
would-
was one of the police department.
It might be there, the issue is that of recording, and it's difficult to record in that room, and so, as of now, it's been scheduled here. If we hear anything differently, we'll obviously let you know.
And I got one more comment. It's right after a council election. We could have 3 green council members at that meeting, so just something else to consider, that they're gonna have a lot of getting up to speed potentially. If you're a candidate for council, do your research.
Did you get signage?
Yeah.
Item number 12, public comment for items on the agenda. No one's here. Item number 13 would be planning commission comments. Ms. Lancaster, I'd like to start with you.
Thank you. Good to see you all. No other comments.
No comment.
You got something, come on.
I'm gonna think about this. You mentioned the word facilitation. I don't think anybody on this commission, nor city council, is a trained facilitator or has had that. Might that be an idea that city manager get a facilitator involved? Maybe not for this meeting, but in the future. I mean, it seems kind of silly to have a total of 18 people talking cross purposes at one another with no focus. Needs more time.
Well, it's not silly if the true intent of the meeting is to come together and collaborate and get ideas born out of that. If it's to go into the woodshed, you don't need a facilitator.
I agree.
for that.
I agree.
Mr. Stratton?
No comment. He said it.
My only comment is to remind anyone out there listening that there's an election on November 5th. Hope you get to the polls if you're registered in Troy.
Mr. Kevin?
Well, my one comment is it seems like an awful short amount of time for that meeting. And maybe it'll just be a first meeting of a couple of meetings, I don't know.
That might be a question to ask. I mean, is this the beginning of like, or can we look to do these on a regular basis, quarterly, or something?
I don't think the intent is over the woodshed concept. I really think the intent is for open discussion, because I think the planning commission has come along. From what I understand from just being here, the planning commission and relationship with city council have gotten a lot better. And so I don't think the intent is for scolding, but I will relay the concerns again upwards. So.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
With all this talk of woodshed and spankings, I'll make sure Alan comes.
Come on. Mr. Schultz, anything?
No.
I'm done. Okay. Mr. Shepke?
One thing, 2 weeks ago, I turned in a copy of Kalamazoo's sign ordinance, that maybe there's something we can pick from that and use in Troy. Our community's growing very rapidly. There's a lot of things in that ordinance that would not apply to Troy, but I think there's a lot of things in there that maybe we can pick a few items out of there and not have to reinvent the wheel. So I think that it's at least worth looking at.
Well, thank you for that. And I don't know if anybody around the table knows what got the Flag Star sign on Big Beaver turned off, but I don't know if anybody's noticed that. But you drive by there when the sun's down, before when it was lit, it was horribly bright, horribly bright. And it hasn't been lit now for probably a month or more. So anyways. Kathy, do you have anything?
I do not, thank you.
Frank? No. All right. Good meeting, guys. Thank you for your patience, and we're adjourned.